and heavy industry is the story of a contagious way of life in one of the most interesting cities of the South, a city that has been the coveted prize of 5 nations, was once a part of an independent state, an historic city founded in 1702, yet one that is constantly changing. In fact, its very name is Mobile. Mobile, a city of the old South, of the old world, a city where the influence of each period has left an indelible stamp. The French, lovely homes reminiscent of that period. The Spanish, houses with doorways right on the street. The English and early American. And of course, Confederates are around in great numbers. But the period that really stands out was the reign of King Cotton in the mid-1800s. Princes of that period were plantation owners on the Alabama and Tombigbee rivers, riverboatmen, and the shippers on the docks. They lived high, wide, and handsome, establishing a way of life and beautiful homes to be imitated generations to come. Furnishings were often brought from Europe in chartered boatloads. They reveled in the grand style and enjoyed it to the hilt. And to Mobile in the 1850s, the Southern Belle brought her finery and her charm. Let's take a glimpse into the life of a Mobile belle of that period. Her day began and ended in a huge bed with a stepladder, both ornamental and useful. It was before the days of the tiled bathroom, face washing, and even the bedroom chores. She always dressed for breakfast. House guests were often present, and their stay was sometimes extended. The typical breakfast included fried chicken, steak, and sausage with grits, biscuits, and eggs. This was supposed to last until the main meal at noon. Coffee was strong and black. It was ground and roasted at home. Butter and milk were stored in the spring house. It was before air conditioning, so the kitchen was located well behind the main residence. Rouge was for saloon girls, but just before meeting her beau, a pinch on the cheeks added a demure radiance. Most girls had chaperones until marriage. But perhaps holding hands was not too scandalous for an afternoon's ride in the country. A new game just imported to Mobile from France was all the rage. It was called croquet. Whispering behind fans was another pastime. The gatekeeper had more duties than hitching horses. It was important to know what guests were arriving. Sometimes the family was not home. Lavish balls, gracious living, and home entertaining have always been Mobile traditions. For this reason, the Stewart home in Spring Hill has a circular ballroom with a suspension floor to give an extra bounce to the waltz. Earlier Mobilians danced in the circle too, a bit less genteel, however. One of the first Europeans to see this war dance was the Spanish explorer De Soto. At intermission, Indians of ancient Mobile attacked the explorers and kept gold-hunting soldiers from joining their ships in Mobile Bay. This early Spanish map of the Gulf Coast shows the prominence given Mobile Bay in the 16th century. The French maps had a different view of things, but they planted the capital of their mid-continent empire, called Louisiana, on the same prized bay. Under Iberville, the first French settlement was 27 miles up the river and moved to its present location in 1711 by his brother Bienville. The French plan to push the British off the Atlantic coast failed, but the influence of this tiny fort was felt to the Ohio River. Mobilians have always appreciated the finer things of life. In fact, the very founders complained not about the Indians, storms, and famine, but the lack of women at this new paradise. So in 1704, at the request of Bienville, King Louis XIV sent over 23 volunteer maidens, each with cassette under arm and matrimony on her mind. The cassette was a small trunk containing a dowry, the gift of the king. Romance blossomed, and records in Mobile's cathedral reveal that all but one were married in a month. A population boost at Fort Louis de la Mobile soon followed. The operetta Naughty Marietta was based on the cassette girl's story, but the setting was changed to another city. Leaving gay Paris for such a kitchen must have been disheartening. So real trouble arose over the food, mostly corn pone from an Indian recipe. It was terrible. So the cassette girls staged the New World's first petticoat rebellion. Better food arrived shortly, and gracious living was off to a slow start. Governor Cadillac, who always dressed in silk and satin, followed Bienville in command. He reported of his colony, "The sands are fit only for hourglasses." But time would change all this. The old stockade was replaced by a fine brick fort, where some men were sawed in half for desertion. Early Mobile was quiet for a while. Just a few wars with the British, the Spanish, and headaches from Indian tomahawks. Later, Louisiana headquarters were moved to an obscure outpost then called Nouvelle-Orléans. In 1763, King Louis lost the French and Indian War, and the English flag was hoisted over Fort Conde. The English called it Fort Charlotte for their queen. Into the dark forests went private English traders of the John Forbes Company. They worked with an Indian chieftain named Alexander McGillivray, a businessman who held a commission in one army while spying for two others. The English had hardly finished their dungeons before the first customer arrived. The Continental Congress tried to drum up men and money for the American cause here. But while reading the Declaration of Independence on the street corner, their representative was stoned, jailed, and run out of town. The American Revolution. General Washington encouraged the Spanish to take Mobile from the British. So a third flag was raised over this strategic city, now called Fort Carlotta. Mobilians' love of beauty was evident when the United States seized control in 1813. They found 125 homes, many decorated with flowers, vines, and picket fences. It is said General Wilkinson knocked on the gates of the city and was told in 3 languages to enter. Then he was ignored by the sophisticated Mobilians who considered Americans uncouth. Shortly afterward, Old Church Street Cemetery was established for victims of yellow fever, a disease that killed 1/3 the population in a decade. Epitaphs tell the story. An entire family died of this scourge. Clocks show the hours these ladies departed. A man entombed between his 2 wives. A widow aged 13. Later, a Mobile general, William Gorgas, helped conquer yellow fever and made possible the Panama Canal. The tombstone of Michael Kraft is decorated with cowbells and rakes. For this jolly fellow started the New World's first mystic parading society, a forerunner of Mardi Gras. A few drinks on New Year's Eve, 1830, in Madame La Tourette's Cafe, then Kraft and his merry men raided a hardware store to wake up the town. Gala floats soon replaced cowbells and rakes, and in 1835, the celebration spread to New Orleans. Today, scores of mystic societies parade the streets. Symbol floats of some have remained the same for nearly 100 years. And mules still are used for the sake of tradition. Magnificent private balls follow parades. Everybody dances. It's double rush and no unmasking. For 4 days, King Felix and his queen are monarchs of fun, frolic, and misrule. The queen's coronation is as impressive as it is elaborate. In the early 1800s, the Southeast was terrorized by gangs of outlaws. Probably the most notorious was the Copeland gang that hid in swamps around Mobile. Twice they set fire to Mobile while looting, the last major city to be a victim of this ancient robbery technique. James Copeland's diary later revealed that several prosperous Mobilians were members of this notorious gang. Mobile's sixth flag was raised when Alabama established an independent state in 1861 before joining the Confederacy. Destiny chose Mobile Bay to alter the course of naval history. Here, the South ran the Union blockade, trading cotton for guns overseas. Across the entrance to their harbor, Mobilians planted some of the world's first naval torpedoes. They were barrels of gunpowder covered with tar, yet kept the Northern Navy out of the bay for 3 years. They prompted Admiral Farragut's famous phrase, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," and a new weapon claimed its first victim. 20 Union ships fought all one day to conquer 3 Confederate gunboats and the ironclad ram, the Tennessee. Outfitted in Mobile, its performance against 200 guns at close range ushered in the iron battleship era. More naval history was made at a Mobile machine shop, where a crude boiler was converted into a submarine. The H.L. Hundley, hand-propelled, later rammed its explosive prow into a northern ship off Charleston Harbor. The submarine sank beneath the torpedoed enemy. Admiral Raphael Semmes was history's greatest sea raider. His ship, the Alabama, built in England in exchange for southern cotton, captured 70 Union vessels and was finally sunk off the coast of France while seeking repairs. The last major battle of the Civil War was fought across the bay at Spanish Fort. Here, 2,000 rebels stood for weeks against some 40,000 Yankee siege troops. Mobile did not surrender until they were sure the South had lost. In fact, the Confederate flag flew here 3 days after General Lee's surrender. Even though Union forces made this residence their headquarters, the owner of the property, a Mrs. Ketchum, was not one to be turned out in the cold. She remained there in charge of her home. Rather than walk under Union flags above headquarters, Mobile ladies would detour across then muddy Government Street. A Mobile beauty, world-famed in her day, was Madame Octavia Walton Levert. Here she entertained presidents, writers, and others of renown when they visited the city. Americans today send billions abroad to aid both friend and foe. But this was not the case after the Civil War. Mobile and the South were destitute and taxed heavily by the occupation forces. There was hardly money to plant crops. In 1865, a group of Mobile citizens chartered a banking institution. But then you couldn't draw your money from any bank without a carpetbag stamp. Mobile and the First National prospered, and the original building gave way for other quarters and the modern building today. As one of the South's oldest banks, It remembers lessons of the past and encourages thrift at early ages. Mobile's City Hall, built in 1858, served for a century as the Southern Market. Stalls that once sold fish, vegetables, and meat now house a modern fire department. In this market, a dime would buy a gallon of real fresh milk, but you had to milk the cow yourself. One of the nation's earlier meat packers began operations here. It was before refrigeration, so the housewife could only buy meat in the mornings. The packers were rounding up the next day's supply in the afternoon. Stalls of the old market have given way to modern shopping centers, where you can shop all day for meat. They will even grind your coffee. And what's more, you don't have to milk the cow anymore. The cow would rather be in the pasture anyway and let others handle the customer. Once, when you were sick, you would walk miles to get a prescription filled with good witchery, that is. Long hours to compound medical herbs developed the need of a soda fountain for waiting customers. Today, the soda fountain is a haven for busy shoppers. And the prescription? Well, it's a matter of a finger movement at the telephone, a few minutes for filling, and then delivery before time for your next pill. In 1805, the Spanish governor's proclamations were nailed to trees around Mobile. This one gave the John Forbes Company of England the exclusive privilege of continuing to trade with the Indians. On the site of the old trading post now stands the Merchants National Bank. It hardly resembles the old trading post that once filled this area. Since 1927, this swamp has been converted into the Alabama State Docks, Maritime of the Gulf Coast. Prompt handling, economy of operation, and ample storage facilities have attracted over 100 steamship lines that make Mobile a port of call. There is a constant growth to meet world shipping needs. Grain is brought here from many parts of the nation to begin its overseas journey. One of the nation's largest steamship lines has its headquarters here. From its unique building overlooking the port, daily contact is maintained with its ships plying the 7 seas. In the lobby of the Waterman Building is one of the largest rotating globes in the world. Walls of forts guarding Mobile were never shattered even after days of bombardment. These walls were put together with mortar made of oyster shells from the bay. Today, these same shell banks are a source of raw material for a cement manufacturer here. Its product no longer builds forts, but many of the nation's highways are paved with oyster shell cement from Mobile Bay. Mobile's conservative streak shows in many ways. Long ago, one of Mobile's conservative gentlemen erected this building, but on a large foundation. Recently, a national real estate developer added to the old structure, now a dramatic part of the skyline. Cooking a 4-course dinner over an open fire had its problems. With the era of the pot-bellied stove, Pa chopped the kindling and Ma took out the ashes. Today, kindling is electrical for most folks, coming to their homes over the wires for cooking, heating, and even dishwashing. Mobilians hardly look any different from anyone else, but they have a civic spirit all their own. Their main charity drive goes way over the top every year. Citizens replaced such private schools in 1836 with Barton Academy, the first public school in Alabama. In 1848, from other ports. So Mobile, a city of only 20,000, longest railroad of the day to the Ohio River, and cotton business was revived. During the Civil War, Yankee soldiers bent rails of the old Mobile and Ohio around nearby trees. Today, the grandson of one of the rail-bending soldiers, Glenn Brock, is president of the Gulf, Mobile, and Ohio, now one of the nation's major rail systems. This home on Government Street was given Admiral Raphael Semmes in gratitude by local citizens. This Episcopal church was once closed by Union forces because its pastor would not pray for the government of occupation. In just a brief drive through the city, visitors see the continental influence that prevails. There are more patterns of authentic old iron grillwork here than in any city of the nation. Today, Mobile makes her own grillwork of both old and new design. The American National Bank, one of the underwriters of Mobile's progress, has built to retain the timeless charm of the old city in the midst of the modern. Undergirding this structure is a 20-story foundation, and as the saying goes, the wealth of the past is safely invested in Mobile's future. Sometimes called the city under the trees by airline pilots, Mobile is famous the world over for its stately live oak trees. Streets are often rerouted to protect trees in their path. One of Mobile's trademarks is her stately collection of antebellum homes, many hewn from southern pines right on the owner's property. Today, a Mobilian is likely to build two modest homes, both of the same lasting qualities and design, one as a retreat by the water. Mobile's Azalea Trail attracts visitors by the thousands in February and March to see this 35-mile floral extravaganza. Imagine seeing sights like these after leaving the snow-covered north. Long Gardens is one of the show places open to Azalea Trail visitors. The flowers and landscaping are a challenge to the imagination. Few visitors want to leave without seeing Bellengrath Gardens. It is a 60-acre charm spot that flourishes the year round. Back in the city, there are many other interesting things to see. This Episcopal church, built by members who brought their own tools, lumber, and slaves. Once slave quarters, these homes were deeded by the plantation owners to the freed Negro families. The stately Kirkbride home was the first courthouse and jail. Prisoners' irons may still be seen in its dungeon. Spring Hill College was founded in the early 1800s. The huge Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, which was built when this was a small town. Oakley, one of Mobile's fine antebellum homes, was built in the 1830s. Now the home of the historic Mobile Preservation Society, it charms many visitors with its period furnishings and museum items of the past. And here is one of the largest churches in the nation, a symbol of a strong faith. From whatever direction you enter the city, the graciousness of southern living is offered the wayfaring traveler. Behind breastworks that once protected soldiers, sleepy children fight off the Sandman. Visitors find hotel and motel accommodations in keeping with southern hospitality. When you list the attractions of Mobile, the bounty of the sea is one of its greatest features. Many delicious dishes are prepared from recipes that are hundreds of years old. Few visitors leave Mobile without eating their fill of seafood from the nearby Gulf. One restaurant man has his own oyster bay and reports a record of 13 dozen oysters consumed by one customer. Today, the Southern Belle still enjoys the good life. The convertible has replaced the handsome carriage. The golf course is more popular than croquet, but the six petticoats, the fast social swirl, and the charm of the past are here and as alive as ever. America's Junior Miss Pageant at Azalea Time selects the outstanding teenager sent from 50 states. Mobilians love to swim in the surf at nearby Dauphin Island. And the Alabama Deep Sea Rodeo brings together the fishermen and the big fish. The annual Senior Bowl is an all-star game of national acclaim. So there you have it, Mobile, a city of the Old South, a city where abiding tradition makes it more interesting. Lovely girls at Azalea Time, magnificent homes with delicate lace, streets shaded with oaks, the gaiety of Mardi Gras, that's Mobile. Proud of its way of life and generous in sharing it. Mobile does mean change and progress, but it also stands staunchly for its tradition, charm, and beauty as a city of the Old South.